5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Chairman Powell, for being with us today. Your office has done a very diligent job in working with this body on both sides of the aisle. I chalk some of that up to the fact that you've got some very good folks from Iowa on your staff there helping keep the trains running on time, so that's excellent. I will note that, in Iowa, the average family has experienced, annual inflation of about $925 per month just in the last 3 years. I've got 6 kids. We're the #1 egg-producing state in the country, but yet eggs for each one of my kids goes up 40% this past year. And take that times 6. I'm no economist, but that adds up real quick, and I think I'm reflective of a lot of families across the country right now. So, Mr. Chair, one of the things I'd like to talk about is, what we are focused on and what your department's working on at the Fed. The U.S. Federal Reserve, in my opinion, should be more focused on folks like my hometown of Bondurant, Iowa, versus what's coming out of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, Belgium, for example, which is one of the reasons I'm so grateful that you have talked about reopening Basel III for a conversation on what's in the best interest of the American people. I applaud you and your team for this. While I would like to see Basel III candidly scrapped altogether, I think that there are 3 things in this proposal that we've got to look at immediately. 1, the impact of credit availability, especially to ensure that it won't be tighter credit conditions on small businesses back home in places like Iowa. The ability for farmers across the country to be able to hedge their grain, corn, soybean, livestock in a new Basel III conversation, and ultimately eliminate the downstream effects on American banks being held to higher standards and very clear in Basel III than what's being held in Europe. So with that, I want to readdress your team's attention to the letter I sent in a bipartisan way with Senator Jerry Moran, specifically emphasizing the negative impact of increased bank capital requirements on the economy, our constituents, and ultimately our ag producers across the country. So what I'll first say is, can you confirm that the next Basel III proposal, as outlined, will address concerns from our ag growers, including our farmers?
Let me just say that we're well aware of the concerns you're raising about hedging, and I'm not going to be too specific about things, but we're quite aware of those concerns.
I certainly hope your team gets the opportunity to hear that, because it's one of the most painful things I'm hearing back in my home district. Would you agree that the end user's concerns could have been mitigated, maybe at the front end of this, if Congress or, say, a farmer in my district had been included in those opening conversations?
In hindsight, perhaps that's right. But in any case, this is what the comment period is for.
Well, I'll note that 84% of the comments coming from this proposal concern entities outside of banks, as you know. A lot of those were from the ag industry who felt that they had no voice in this and were a recipient of things that really harm their businesses. With that, I want to read quickly, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers was asked about Basel, and he said, quote, "We're going to need to prepare for consolidation in banking in the future, quite possibly some even further evolution of lending away from banks." Now, I'm going to note here that Iowa has over 250 community banks with assets under $7 billion. His comments are of great concern on this consolidation. Do you share concerns about a consolidation amongst banks across America?
So, I speak for myself. I realize that community banks are tremendously important in their communities, and it's not a better world when community banks go out of business. Or at the same time, if there needs to be consolidation, I don't think we should be standing in the way of that. But we shouldn't. We don't want to be part of the reason why community banks are going out of business or being forced to merge because of, for example, high fixed costs because of regulation or other things.
I would agree with you, Mr. Chairman. We don't want to be the instigator for a small bank to have to go out and stop serving a local community. As we look at Basel III, if it's finalized in early 2025, does that mean we will push implementation back to 2026?
I don't know exactly what it would be, but something like that is right. We'd have a typical phase-in process at the end of the quite a lot of work to do to get to a final rule, and then there'll be a phase-in process. I don't know exactly what the date would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to know kind of a timeline for my folks. I mean, there's obviously 2026, or take my advice, scrap it all together and we can start over, if we even need to do that. Let me ask very quickly, with Chevron overturn, is there anything the Fed is doing to identify areas where maybe we have over-regulated at the federal side and you're self-policing right now?
Under the Chevron decision? Yeah. I mean, again, our view is we're very focused on obeying the law and reading the actual words of the law and interpreting it according to the words that are in the law. This is the way we approach things, and I'm not sure how much will change. You know, basically a court will be doing that with a little bit less deference to the agency, but you know, we think we're already interpreting the law pretty carefully. So, and again, these are brand new decisions. There are several of them, and it's way early. We're just studying them now.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Thank you, Chair, and I hope you continue to self-police. It's much appreciated to you and your team.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina.